Thank you, and thanks very much, Penny, for welcoming us and the Australian contingent here today. And as you said, it's our second Biosecurity Innovation Exchange. So who was there 18 months ago to the initial Biosecurity Exchange we held and hosted in Australia? So a quick show of hands. Okay, so only a few people. I thought it would be more, but there you go. Anyway, welcome everybody to this Biosecurity Innovation Exchange, co-hosted by Australia New Zealand Biosecurity, but hosted here in beautiful Auckland by our New Zealand colleagues, and welcome everybody. I hope that we, from this exchange, as Penny mentioned, deliver as much as we did in terms of outcomes from our initial collaboration. Our initial collaboration, as I said, about 18 months ago, led to us pursuing a number of different specific projects and doing so jointly between Australia and New Zealand. So we made a commitment to those projects, and I look forward by the end of today to having a bit of a good, candid discussion on what are some of the actual things that we will do together. So collaboration's good, even better when it delivers some outcomes from our biosecurity system. So before we wrap up and go today, we want to make sure we know what those things are, and who's progressing them and how we're progressing them and what the outcome might be. So a lot of progress has been made, as I said, on our last groups of projects from our initial inaugural Innovation Exchange, and Catherine Geiger, who's going to be up next, I think is going to explain what those are and give you a bit of an insight, so I won't cover those. I will just click to the next slide, the big red button. So to talk about challenges, these challenges aren't unique to Australian perspective. They're a challenge that we both share in terms of biosecurity. Largely, and we all talk about the volumes of trade. Yes, the volumes of trade are dramatically increasing. These are the numbers that we see in Australia. So 21 million international travellers cleared at seaports and airports each year, 158 million mail items, vessels inspected, sea containers, etc., etc. And the reality is, the expectation is that that volume has grown and it will continue to grow. The only trajectory is a growth trajectory. So yes, there's a growth in the increasing volumes of trade and travel. Along with that growth, it's not just a simple linear growth. The other thing that's happening is increasing complexity of supply chains around the world. When we used to source a product from country X, we now tend to find that that product is actually sourced, or the ingredients for that product, is actually sourced from multiple other countries, and you don't necessarily have visibility of that complete supply chain. Not only that, but what we're finding is that there's much more seasonality in the sourcing. So product will appear to come from country X, but it's actually sourced from multiple different countries, depending on seasonality, price, all sorts of things. So the complexity of the supply chain is adding an extra dimension to risk for biosecurity in knowing and understanding exactly where the products are coming from. And thirdly, the other big changer, I think, in terms of biosecurity risk for pests and diseases is changes in the environment, including, obviously, global warming and the impact of climate change in terms of spread of pests and diseases and the threat to us. One small example of this, our most common sort of talked about trans-Tasman bug, if you like, is the brown marmorated stink bug. And yes, it's brown marmorated stink bug season. Just as an example, and the numbers are slightly different for you in the way you count the threat countries than it is for us, but you know, a couple of years ago, we were all focused on really, a couple of countries for brown marmorated stink bug. Last season for Australia, we had sort of 10 alert countries. Now, for this season that we're in, it's 33 alert countries. Now, if that doesn't speak volumes about the spread of pests and diseases around the world, I don't know what does. But this colour chart just shows in a time series how that particular bug has really spread across the temperate climates where it can be homed quite happily. So it's not just the volumes of trade that's increasing, it's actually the spread of pests and diseases around the world that is dramatically increasing. And what ought to worry us on that chart is the colouring of Chile there, in that the expectation is that it may well become established there. And what that means for us is, instead of it being a Northern Hemisphere only and therefore a seasonal pest concern, once it's established in the Southern Hemisphere, it's an all-year-round pest concern. So, you know, if you think of brown marmorated stink bug as a season we gear up for and get worried about and put in special measures, it's going to become part of really what is a new normal for us once it gets established in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's the sort of thing that we've got to look forward to. And in terms of our risk modelling, we've got a fairly fancy sort of risk model that we've been used to assess risk and to work out where we ought to apply our resources to deal with risk as it changes and increases. One of the things our risk modelling told us, and we were looking out to 2030, so between 2015 and out to 2030, we were looking at, well, what's the risk, what's the volume growth, etc. And our risk model told us that we could actually triple our intervention at the border and we would still not then, at 2030, have the same risk levels that we had in 2015. So that just goes to say that tripling your investment at the border, you know, tripling what you're doing now, is not going to deliver the same result that you have today. So using resources as your way to get out of this problem, it's not going to work. Got to do something dramatically different. And that's where the potential for innovation comes in, to make that step change and to do things differently, because just throwing resources at the problem won't solve the problem. And in particular, I think, you know, the opportunity of science and technology applied into our business can give us those opportunities for the major step change in dealing with the pest and disease risks that we face. So I look forward to, over the course of today and the work we do beyond today, using the power of our imagination in this room. We've got people in the room who know about the science, the technology and the potential for innovation. We've got people who know a lot about biosecurity. And it's often said that the best innovations come from putting sort of two different things together, and that combination produces a different result that people hadn't thought of before. So I'm looking forward to spending today to explore what we can do, both collaboratively, Trans-Tasman, but what we can do when we bring this group of people together, so the scientists, the technologists, the people who innovate, and the biosecurity system people, to think of what are the sort of step changes we can apply to our business to deal with that increasing risk and threat environment in a way that produces a totally different result, rather than just the opportunity to throw more and more resources at a problem that is significantly increasing. And yes, you often hear innovation, you know, there's risks with innovating, and there certainly are risks with innovating, but I think the greater risk is not to innovate, because we know that standing still really means, if we don't do anything different in our business, we're actually going backwards in terms of what that threat and risk poses to our country. So I'm really looking forward to today's exchange, and we can focus at the end of the day on what a couple of things that we're going to focus on and pursue in terms of terrific innovation opportunities to make that step change in our biosecurity system so that we can deal with that increasing risk of pests and diseases being established here. Thank you.